Hello, my name is Emma Tobias, and today I'm going to be doing Little Rambles. This is a very sporadic series I do on this channel where I ramble about something for a little while, and it's not super cohesive, and I don't really think about it all too much beforehand, like all of my videos. So anyway, the topic of today's Little Ramble is going to be my mental health and reading. Yay! Because I was filming a video, Little Rambles, about quantity versus quality reading, and as I was making that video, I realized that a big part of how much I read and the quality of what I read has to do with my mental health. I've had that discovery, so I thought I would talk about it. So to go back, I became an avid reader when I was about 15 years old, and at the time, I wasn't concerned very much with how much I was reading. I was concerned with reading things that were considered great, reading things that were in the literary canon, reading Pride and Prejudice, reading Catcher in the Rye, reading The Hobbit, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, reading great books, and books that people told me were great. And this was a really magical time in my reading life because there were so many things that I was discovering. I was discovering all this great literature that people loved and people have connected with for years and years and years, but I was also just discovering the magic of reading and discovering the power it had over me and the power it had to take me out of my own life and take me somewhere where I felt safe and I felt comfortable. When I was about 15, this is the first time that I realized maybe the whole scope of my mental health problems. I was going through my first bout of depression. I wasn't talking to my family about it. I was very isolated and isolated myself, and reading was the greatest way for me to isolate myself and make me feel safe. I was scared of so much that lived outside of my room, that lived outside of my school, and reading allowed me to escape the walls of my school and the walls of my room without actually having to leave my room or my school. And that was really super powerful. And as I got older, my mental health issues got worse and my coping mechanisms were non-existent. And so the only coping mechanism I had, I should say, is reading. It's like as my brain became more of a toxic place, as I thought about like going outside and hanging out with my friends in public and doing things outside of my school or outside of my house or outside of the places that I was comfortable, as those things became scarier, reading became safer. And I think that's true for so many people. Reading is a very safe way to escape ourselves and escape our phobias or our fears or anxieties or our depression for a little while. Reading became a place that was so insular for me. I remember when I was in a very bad place in my life. I was in a place where my obsessive thoughts, my intrusive thoughts were never ending and I could not leave that headspace ever. Reading became a lifeline to me. Reading became almost a compulsion because it felt like when I read, I felt like I was away from it. I remember reading like not all of the Harry Potter books, but a big chunk of the Harry Potter books in that time and escaping into that story. And I think reading is an invaluable way for us to be kinder to ourselves, and as we see ourselves in these stories, like I saw myself in Order of the Phoenix when Harry was going through a really dark time. I saw my depression in that. I saw my anxiety in that, and that was really valuable. I'm reading Turtles All the Way Down. Reading that book has been like reading my own brain in a book, and it's been terrifying, but also incredibly moving and invalidating and wonderful to read a book for the first time where I feel completely heard and seen, and the way that my brain works feels completely heard and seen. Yeah, and so it can be a really great way to cope, and it can also be a way for me, at least in my life, to escape in a negative way. Escape in a way where I was not facing the things that scared me. So it's definitely, it's a complicated thing for me. All in all, reading is so important to me, and the magic and power of books is so important to me. So as I was thinking about this, as I was thinking about my relationship with reading, I was also thinking about, wait, so why have I only read 36 books this year? There's still time left in the year, and I plan on trying to read more this year because I do miss it a lot. But I was like, why have I only read 36 books this year. I normally read about 60 to 70 books a year. And I was thinking about it. I was like, this should have been the year, out of all years, in terms of how incredibly stressful the world is and how scary the world is. This should have been the year for me to have dived in deeper into reading. But I was like, well, I started grad school, I started going out more, I started da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And as I was thinking about that, I was like, why have I started going out more? For most of my life, I was terrified of leaving my house. I was terrified of leaving the places that I was comfortable with. And I realized that for the first time ever, I've learned how to cope without reading. I've learned how to live my life and to do things that scare me, and to go have a drink when I had a phobia of alcohol for most of my life, to, have new experiences, all of this stuff, for the first time without reading. Reading was the only way most of the time for me to be able to cope. And if a friend asked me to go do something with them, I'd normally say no because I was scared of what might happen. So I would stay and I would read. And I think that's really interesting, how my relationship with reading is so connected to my mental health. And it's just a revelation I've had recently. When I think about my life, I think about the way that I sort of constricted reading. I had this tight grasp on it. I had this almost death grip on reading. And I don't think it was a healthy thing between us. Even though reading isn't like a person, reading for me feels like a big part of my life. It feels like something that I want to cherish and take care of and be kind to. And I think I constricted it so much into this place of being like, when I feel sad, when I feel anxious, when I feel terrible, when I feel bad, I'm just going to read, that I lost some of my ability to just truly enjoy it, and enjoy it because I didn't need it. Does that make sense? I don't need to read to feel okay. This sounds really dramatic, I think, to non-readers, but I think to people who read, maybe this will ring true to you in some way. Maybe it won't. I don't feel like I need to read anymore. I read because I love reading, because it makes me really happy. And yes, that kind of maybe goes into mental health. I still think in some ways reading is a very healthy coping mechanism to be kind to yourself, to love yourself. But for me, because I was doing it in a way that it was completely about, to an extent, hiding and going away from the things I was afraid of, that I feel very happy and proud of myself for the fact, yes, I've only read 36 books this year, but they were all books I really liked. Maybe one of them, Today Will Be Different is the only book that I didn't really like that I read this year. But that's a great batting average, to use a sports metaphor. I've read books that I've loved this year. I've read books that spoke to me and connected with me. I read books that took me weeks to read it. I read books that made me cry and made me laugh and made me feel so good. I read books that reminded me of my 16, 15-year-old self discovering reading for the first time, and discovering it not as a coping mechanism, but as a way to just have fun and to explore and to escape in a healthy way. And again, I don't think it's a bad coping mechanism. I think for me it became something of a crutch. Anyway, I hope you liked this little ramble. It was a little bit of a longer little ramble, but I'd love to know your thoughts if you have any. Have a wonderful day. Bye.